Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining in today. Helen is with us today. This is our second go at this, actually. I messed up last time. So, Helen, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate you coming on board and being a guest today.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me.
No, it's a pleasure, absolute pleasure to chat with you. And again, I always start off by asking, tell us about your aromatherapy journey. How did you get interested in essential oils and aromatherapy?
Well, I think I'd always used essential oils when I was younger. So, in the teenage phase when you're going to sort of, retreating into your room and lighting candles and incense and things like that. And when I discovered essential oils, I realized that actually essential oils were far superior to other aromas. So that's kind of how I started out. And I sort of tinkered with them on and off over the years. I played with them a bit. I had a particular incident that happened health-wise that gave me a bit of a health scare. Luckily, it was all fine, but it did give me a bit of a what I'd call like a pivot moment, which I think happens for a lot of aromatherapists. It's, something changes in life and we go, hang on a second, which way am I going to go now? So it was a little bit like that. I kind of thought I didn't want to carry on doing my previous job in the voluntary sector, which I loved. I absolutely loved what I did, but it was very much a sticking plaster for stuff that should be available to people, but wasn't. There was never enough money to work with people. There was never enough time. There was never enough appointments to give people. So working with charities always felt like you were doing some great work, but you couldn't always be as useful as you wanted to be. And when I realized I kind of wanted a change in career, I had this kind of pivot moment. And it was quite easy to decide what to do, actually. It was surprisingly easy. Sometimes the big decisions are, aren't they? They're just like, oh, just do that, There was a background to it. I'd enjoyed it. I'd read a few books. I'd enjoyed the oils I'd used. I'd had a particular experience where I was struggling with insomnia. So I was taking some sleeping tablets, which they worked at first, but then they stopped working. And then I had this lovely bath one night in this blend of ylang ylang and sandalwood that my husband had brought me. And I had the best night's sleep. And that was the night I didn't have the sleeping tablets. And I thought, oh, I think I fancy knowing a bit more about this aromatherapy. So that was it, really. That was kind of the decision about what to do. It wasn't that difficult. There was that pivot moment, and then there was that bath, really, and the two came together.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, that's fantastic. That's a wonderful start to it's kind of you discovered it by accident, literally, I suppose, wasn't it? It was like, catalyst,
Yeah, I think
husband,
probably.
blend, and yeah, having a bath and
Yeah,
everything kind of culminated in yeah.
yeah. And it was at the right time. You get that moment where you think, I need to do something different. I don't want my life to carry on in this particular way. And I think that's very often the same with our clients, isn't it? I know like a third of my clients, I would say a third to come to me for self-care and maintenance. They're people that are very good at knowing what they need to do as part of their self-care package to look after themselves. A third come because there's a specific issue, like it's normally something quite physical, like sleep, or they've got achy shoulders, or they sit at a computer a day. And then a third come because actually something's really happened in life, and it might be a bereavement, it might be a period of anxiety, panic attacks, depression. There might be some sort of loss or change in their life. And I kind of think that's quite often how we come to it as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
Just, something changes, and that takes us in that direction. So
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I totally understand what you mean. And so then did you go on to study?
Yeah. So I trained with Gabriel Mojay's school, the Institute of Traditional Herbal Medicine and Aromatherapy. So I trained in London in 2005. I started my training. And I loved that. That was really great. I remember we were making things in the first weekend, and I was thinking, this is it. I've come home. It's that lovely feeling of like, right, I absolutely know I could do this for the rest of my life now. So that was really reassuring, because that would be very worrying if you didn't get that feeling, wouldn't
Exactly.
it? No, oops. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and was very lucky because we got to go to Provence. We got a study trip in Provence at the time. and
Wow.
went out, and Rhiannon Lewis looked after us and took care of us, and taught us while we were out there the chemistry, and we went on wonderful walks, looking at different plants, different herbal plants, and going up to sort of walk through lavender fields and things. So it was really, that was kind of like the icing on the cake, really, because it felt like, you know, France is a home of aromatherapy in so many ways, isn't
Mhm,
it? And it was
mhm,
lovely to put the two together, really. So
mhm.
I look back with very fond memories of my training. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, well, that's really good. That's really good to hear that the memories are still there from the schooling days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. I know what you mean. So that's awesome. So when you finished studying and you finished, your studies there at Gabriel School, did you immediately go working in a clinical environment or for yourself or um,
Well, I played it very safe, to be honest, like I think a lot of people do. So I found it very hard to give up the paycheck, if I'm honest. Um,
I know what you
I'm
mean.
not I'm not a risk taker by nature. I'm more of a risk taker now than I ever have been, but I certainly wasn't then. So it was a bit of a struggle, the idea of giving up the paycheck. And I was very naive. I thought, well, do you know what? Maybe I'll just like ease my hours down, and I'll bring my aromatherapy in, and I'll keep on my case studies, and they'll become paying clients. And I had this great idea of how it was going to build amazingly quickly. And of course, it doesn't always work like that. So I did it very part-time, really. I was lucky I worked in London at the time. I worked part-time at home. So I could do part of my week at home, part of my week in London. And that meant I had a treatment room at home. I could work from home. So I worked a couple of evenings and a weekend, that sort of thing. And I kept that going for quite a while, and then realized actually I wasn't really going to get anywhere doing that. And eventually I needed to just do it properly. um, and then I left my previous job, and then I fell pregnant. So actually it didn't quite work out either in the sequence of things. But it was, you know, I think that's often the way with life. It can be a bit organic,
Yeah.
and that's okay. You know, it gave me a really good appreciation of how hard it is to get something new going. And that's fine. And I've done a variety of things over the years. I've done mobile work. I've worked in clinics. I've worked in my own space. So yeah, it's been a really good experience. I did for a while, I worked with our local multiple sclerosis therapy centre.
Okay.
So that was a really, really good experience of working with people who I had my first experiences there of working with people who were non-verbal, people who were quite close towards the end of life, people who experienced a lot of differing disabilities due to their differing conditions, medical conditions. And that was, really good experience, and very humbling experience as well. So
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's been
Yeah.
a bit, it feels like there's always been a bit of variety in life. I have a massage chair as well, and I go out into workplaces and massage as well. So I feel like I don't like every day to be exactly the same. I kind
That,
of like a bit of stability and a bit of routine, but I don't like every single day to be the same. So I like to mix it up a little bit.
That's awesome. No, no, I could totally understand that. And that's the great thing about our profession is that you can make it different each
Yeah,
day because of the nature of it and the people and everything.
yeah.
So I totally understand that. So, and also one of your more recent adventures is your book.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I didn't plan to do that particularly either.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting. I find that's another avenue of exploration there. So tell us how you started writing.
So that came about largely because in early 2020, Karen at the Wells School, Karen and I had got together in 2019, and we'd kept in touch. We'd had lots of conversations. I'd just trained to teach at FE level, so that was again good timing. And we talked about things that I could possibly embark on with the school, and things that we might be able to do together. So that was how it started. So we had this idea of doing some courses that looked at additional oils. So looked at oils that we don't traditionally train with. So,
Mhm.
you know, when we train, although it's different in every school, you get your kind of your core oils, don't you? Your 65 to 70 oils. And yeah, there's hundreds of oils out there. And I'm not sure in my lifetime I'm ever going to try them all. Because the reality is it's ever changing, isn't it? You know, there's things now that we would perhaps never try because you know, we know that they're endangered, for example, or you know, very rare or something. So yeah, so that's how it started. We started teaching those courses, and I had a conversation with Karen one day where I said, oh, we could write a book about this, couldn't we? And Karen said, that's a great idea, Helen, do you want to do that? So that's how it came about, really. It was that kind of that, what it took me back to, I think the lovely thing about teaching is that very often it reminds you how great it is to be a student. You know, that going back to what I was saying about, you know, you feel like you've come home, is that lovely feeling where you're making something, you think, I could do this forever. And I think you get to share that passion when you teach, don't you? And I think it reinvigorates you in some way. And I think it sort of just fired off this idea of actually let's think about, you know, putting this out there on a in a different way, on a different sort of avenue, I suppose. And I'd never really thought about writing a book at all. It wasn't a plan. It was just that conversation and that thought about actually it would be nice to share this idea of looking at more unusual oils, you know, the ones that you go to and sometimes you see a bit about them in one book but you don't in another, you know, that kind of thing. So
Mhm.
that was the thought process behind it. It was just to give them a bit of a bigger voice,
Yeah.
because when we start out in aromatherapy we think of our lavender and our peppermint and our eucalyptus and our lemon, don't we? But there's all this sort of myriad of other beautiful oils that
Mm.
often go quite unexplored and unappreciated. So
Mhm.
that was what was behind the motivation for doing the book. And I think what I also realized when I was writing it was that I hadn't appreciated how much time it takes to research an essential oil. But actually what I discovered was that I really like it. I'm really quite geeky about it. Um, and it's great because when you're doing it, you know, you might read something in one place and you read something, but there's no evidence for it. So you're sitting there trying to pick through, thinking, right, okay, why is this statement being made? Is it because of the chemistry? Is it because of something else? And sometimes you get to join up the dots, and that's really exciting because you get to go beyond perhaps, if you know, a paragraph you find in a book on the oil, you get to go beyond that. So yeah, that's something I really enjoy, and it felt like it was something good to come out of 2020 as well. There were lots of other good things as well, but I think there was some weird sort of thing inside of me that felt I needed to produce something at the end of the year that
Okay. Okay.
um,
Yeah.
felt useful in some way, I suppose. I don't know. But so that started the journey really of
Wow.
writing. And yeah, I decided when I started to write it, initially I thought I'd cover lots of oils in one book. And then I thought actually I'd rather have a book that felt a bit more like a conversation, because if you get me interested in something, I can chat till the cows come home. You know, I can go on for ages. But I quite wanted that sort of informal,
Mhm.
chatty way of talking,
Sure.
so that it would feel like, you know, you and me having a chat now, that I wanted that sort of feel to go into the book. And I didn't want something that people would look at once for a particular thing and then put down and put away. I wanted it more to feel like it was a conversation or a kind of a journey, I guess, really.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I understand. Rather than an academic kind of textbook,
Yeah,
make it a bit more
yeah,
in that sense. So yeah, I understand
yeah.
that. Oh, that's how many oils did you research and write about for the book?
So I did 18 in the first book,
Okay.
and then I'm doing volume 2 now.
Okay.
As well, I decided to split it all up, and so I've got 20 in the new one as well. So yeah,
Okay.
again, so it's not, not great big a chunky book or anything. I mean, that also allows you to keep the price down as well. If you make something much smaller and paperback, it makes it easier for a price point for people as well. And I felt like I wanted to produce something that would be useful to people who might be students or people who might have been aromatherapists for a long time, but they perhaps want to try something new, or they perhaps haven't heard about some of the oils in that much depth. So I wanted to write something that was accessible to lots of people that had an interest in aromatherapy or were trained as aromatherapists.
Hmm. Okay. Wow. That's how did you come up with the oils? Was it things that you went or were they? Did you try them all before you got them, so to speak? Like sometimes I'll read about an oil that I haven't
Yeah.
used, and oh, that sounds interesting, and I'll do research and I'll find it, and it just sounds really nice. So was
Yeah.
it a bit like that, or did you smell it first and go, oh yeah, I bond with this one, and this is what I want to write about?
Yeah. Well, with yeah, so with volume one, it was partly led by some of the oils that we'd looked at in the classes.
Mhm.
So there were a few oils in there that we didn't do in the classes, but there were oils that we'd done. Um, so, and that kind of made sense in lots of ways. And then with volume two, there were oils I wanted to include, but I decided I didn't necessarily like a couple of them. So I decided I just had to leave them out. If I couldn't really sit with them and get to know them and really feel them, I couldn't, it didn't feel quite right writing about them really. So I've kind of left them for another time. And it's very rare that I do that, because I always think if you smell an oil and you don't like it, you just need to work with it some more. You need to go back to it. You need to work with it in different ways. And I like to explore that in quite a lot of detail. But yeah, so I decided I was only going to use oils that that I felt I really connected with, that
Mhm.
felt very personal to me. And it's interesting because in volume one of the oils that people have been really quite interested in, the feedback I've got, and sort of you get an email from somebody and they say, actually, I went and bought this oil because I read about it and I really, really love it. And I found it's useful for this as well. And you're like, oh, which is really great, isn't it? Because then you think, oh, that's so nice, because you've introduced somebody else to a new oil. But yeah, interestingly, Nagle got a lot of interest, which is an oil that we very rarely hear about,
Mm.
very rarely indeed. Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see out of the next book which oil will get the most interest, or the
Okay.
one I'll get the most feedback about. We'll see, won't we? Because sometimes it's a surprise, but sometimes oils almost come to me. So you know how you said about, you read about an oil and you think, oh, I love that, I really love that oil, and you've read about it, but you haven't necessarily smelt it. So that's how I was first introduced to Moldavian Dragonhead. I read an article on it, and I almost fell in love with it because of what I was reading in the article, because it just sounded so, it had the most amazing name as well. It's like Moldavian Dragonhead. I mean, it's a fantastic name. How can you not want to go and buy it with a name like that?
Fantastic. I love it. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very fantastical, isn't it? So I thought, oh, I've got to get some of this. And then I ordered some and it arrived. And you know that lovely moment when your oils arrive in the post and you rip the post open and you're like desperate to get the lid off and have a smell. And it's just amazing.
Mm.
And a wonderful, wonderful oil to work with, incredibly gentle, really, really useful for so many things. But I'd never heard anything about it. It's very hard to find information about it. There isn't any in the many of the sort of the standard textbooks that we have don't cover it. So it's really lovely to be able to bring those to people's attention as well.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I can. You've probably started a trickle effect now. You're probably just going to keep writing now. There'll be volume three, volume four, because you know it's one of those things, isn't it? That you could just keep going and going. I imagine
Yeah, yeah,
it gets easier
yeah,
for it. And yeah, that's fantastic. So,
yeah.
out of the new oil discoveries that you've written about and you've researched, what are some of your favorite ones that you've?
Gosh, well, I have to say, I had, sometimes you read about an oil or you learn about an oil and you think That sounds amazing, but you haven't quite got it yet. Even if you've worked really hard with it and you've sat with it, and you don't feel like you've got the entirety of the oil, or the, you know, what's behind it, the power of it. And then suddenly something happens and you use it, and it just has a profound effect. And I had that with Copaiba. So I went to Aromatherapist school in South America. I went to Carla's, had an online lesson on a masterclass on Copaiba, and I thought, this is great, you know, because I'm going to hear all about it from an expert in this oil. And I heard about it, and I learned loads of information, and I had the oil and I had the oleoresin as well. And I thought, right, I've got the essential oil, I've got the oleoresin as well. And I still hadn't quite had that really powerful moment that you suddenly get sometimes with an oil. And I thought, that's fine, it'll come, it'll come. And then I used it one day for, I don't want to say too much because it's my second book. I used it for a particular incident that happened that was very upsetting and traumatic, sort of emotionally, but also physically as well. It was very unpleasant. And it was the most amazing physical reaction that I had to it, but also on an emotional and a spiritual level, it was very, it really hit what was needed, you know, it really hit the spot. And so, yeah, so out of all of the oils, that might have to be one of my favorites that I've written about in all time, because I've written quite a few articles for different aromatherapy journals and things as well. But yeah, I think that might be my favorite. But yeah, so that was really good. Copaiba, I love that. There's so many. Angelica seed, I think, is really fascinating, because whenever you pick up the aromatherapy books, they talk about Angelica root, don't they? And they mention seed in passing like it's this poor relation. And actually, Angelica seed oil is amazing. I think it's a huge oil for people that want to feel optimistic and, you know, go in a new direction. And it's quite a transformative oil in lots of ways as well. So I feel really happy to being able to write about the root, which is more commonly written about, still quite unusual, but more commonly written about, but also the seed, because then you're kind of looking at different parts of the plant as well, and how that marries up and how that works together. So that's been quite a fascinating journey. And I think the more I've worked with writing and the more I've worked with teaching, I guess, as well, you realize more and more about what the plant tells us all the time. And I kind of think, I've spent lots of years not really looking at plants properly, you know, like looking at them, but not really looking at them. You know, it's like, yeah. So that's been really interesting as well. And I think that's, you know, studying Angelica root and then studying Angelica seed has been quite an interesting comparison in that respect. But it's been lovely to also then do some things like some new essential oils that have been released, you know, just last year, like some of your lovely Australian oils, so mango myrtle, pineapple myrtle. You know, it's great to have something that has only been out for, well, I don't think they've been out for a year yet. So,
yeah, I'm not,
you know, that's,
so I know, I know the
you
trick.
you have to have them, David. They're brilliant.
Yeah, that's it now. Yeah, I'm gonna
They
go.
are like, both of them are like nothing you've ever smelt before.
Okay. Mango.
I mean, somebody might prove me wrong there, but I've never smelled essential oils that smell like them. I mean, the pineapple myrtle is just like pure pineapple on a plate.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm gonna I had pineapple
You're gonna
last
lick them out
night.
now, aren't you?
No, I had pineapple for dinner last night because that's one fruit that's really cheap here at the moment. Pineapples are everywhere, and I had it last night. So you've just triggered my pineapple smell. Yeah, that'll be beautiful.
Yeah. It kind of almost makes me salivate just thinking about the smell. It
That's
does,
what you've done.
doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what you've done. So yeah.
And that's how evocative it is, isn't it? You know, it's like I always remember, you know, working with a client who was feeling really quite sort of flat. We were talking about this earlier, weren't we? You know, post COVID and all the changes that we've had in the world over the last, you know, few years, and we were working with a particular blend. And she was saying, "Oh, this reminds me of my holidays in Italy." And years ago when she was younger, and she hadn't been able to travel for many, many years, not because of COVID, but because of personal circumstance. And that's wonderful, because you think actually you've something as simple as an essential oil blend has just transported you back to that happier time, that memory of that aroma, and that, I guess it's
Mm,
that association, isn't it? Which
yeah,
is, quite precious, isn't it, for a lot of people?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. No,
yeah,
absolutely. That's the wonders of our essential oils and aromatherapy that we do. So, oh, look,
yeah,
I can't wait to actually get the book myself. Both of them, especially when the second one comes out. So, is it okay, Helen, if I pop your details on the screen below here?
of course.
And a link to where people can buy the book as well. Is that,
Yeah, yeah,
check it out. I'll leave that on screen, and I'll pop your social media details here in case anyone wants to get in touch with you and ask you more questions. But
brilliant.
I really wanted to thank you again, Helen, for coming on today and chatting with me.
Oh, thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and yeah, yeah, I love to have a follow up, and again in a couple of months when the book's out, and what the feedback is on the different oils. That'd be great.
Well, I'll probably be very relieved sitting in a corner eating lots of chocolate at that point. Reading a book that isn't about
Yeah,
aromatherapy.
I can. Well, thanks again,
With my
Helen.
pineapple myrtle in the background.
That's, well, I'll message you about that. That's for sure. I'll let you know 100% about that one because I'm really excited
Yeah,
myself. But thank you
lovely.
again for your time.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. And yeah, we'll stay in touch.
Brilliant. Take
All right.
care.
Thanks, Helen. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care.